experience that I was told. I was speaking in Vancouver, and this will sound crazy to the five senses, but it's all explainable. I'm sure we'll get into it. I mean, what we call shape shifting is absolutely explainable, but only explainable by an understanding of what reality really is, as opposed to it's all solid, so you can't move from a solid form to a solid form and back again. Well, no, you can't. But this reality is not solid, amazing as that may seem to the five senses. So I was speaking in Vancouver, and afterwards, one of the organizers said to me, I've got a lady here. You've got to speak to her because she's got an amazing story to tell. So we went into a back room, and this is a power dressing businesswoman. And running her own business, and not of this esoteric arena at all. And she told me a story of a relationship she had with a guy. And she said he had a dark side, which she said but he had a dark side. But in another side, he was a pretty nice guy. So one night, she said, she's shaking, and this was some years before the experience, but she was shaking when she was telling me, relaying it and remembering it. She said, we went into my bedroom to have sex. She said, and on my shelf just above the bed was The Biggest Secret, the book I've just described. And he got very, very angry, she said, that I would be reading such nonsense. That's when I introduced the reptilian side of it. And she said, anyway, they're having sex. And she had a hand, she said, on his back while he lay on top of her. And she said, suddenly something pushed my hand back. Really fiercely. She said, and I looked over his shoulder, and the guy had sprouted a tail. And what he was doing as this was happening, just before this was happening in the build-up, she said he was getting incredibly aggressive, horrible. And suddenly this tail sprouted, pushed her hand back, and she screamed, and he stood up. And when he stood up, he was a full reptilian. And then very quickly it went back to human, and he left the house never to be seen again. And, these stories on first hearing are like, oh, come on, man. But when you've heard them so many times in different parts of the world, say, well, something's going on clearly. So what is it? And how do we explain it? And like I say, the five senses, which are constantly decoding this reality into an apparently physical realm, they cannot grasp anything beyond it. You've got to expand your consciousness beyond the five senses before you can start to understand things, because the five senses are programmed not to understand them. And so I realized that I had to research the nature of reality itself. And I got into that big time, and I'm still going on now. And the thing is, if you think or realize how we create this reality, and we create it in the same way, because the modern technological world is mimicking the reality we're experiencing and how we decode it. We are decoding it in the same way as a computer decodes Wi-Fi. So you've got this Wi-Fi field. It's a whole reality, global reality. Any computer that taps into this reality will access it anywhere in the world. And what is it doing? In the radiation field we call Wi-Fi are all everything that exists on the internet. And the computer picks up, decodes that part of the internet that the guy or whatever at the keyboard and the mouse directs it to decode. So I will see this website, someone else will see another website, but they're decoding the same reality, the same Wi-Fi reality. And when you then play this out, and again, this is mainstream science, we're doing the same to create the world that we're experiencing. So the five senses, they pick up wave field information, they pick up frequency, and they turn the frequency information, think Wi-Fi, into electrical information, which is communicated to the brain, which then decodes it into holographic, illusory, physical, digital information. And it's at the level of the digital that Gary's work kicks in, because they're reading that level of it, and you can read the frequency level of it, you can read the holographic level of it, you can read the digital level of it, but you're reading the same information in different forms. I've had psychic readings, reading the and I did this for my research. I had a psychic reading and a numerological reading very close to each other. I was in Australia, and the psychic is basically picking up frequency information, and the numerologist is picking up numerological information, digital information, if you like. And the readings were stunningly the same, because they're reading the same information in different forms. So what we're doing, therefore, is we are picking up frequency information, think Wi-Fi again, we're turning it into digital holographic information, which is the world we think we're experiencing, which is external to us, but actually it's within us. Just as if you look at a computer decoding Wi-Fi, the decoding is going on inside the computer, and we just observe that decoding on the screen of the computer. So what we're looking at, therefore, in terms of this reptilian human shapeshifting is a dual hybrid, not physical body as we perceive it, a dual hybrid information field. And the information field that is projected virtually all of the time, for obvious reasons, in the reality we call human, is the human one. So when I'm observing someone who is apparently human, then that's the field, the human information field, that I am decoding, and I will decode that into a human being. But sometimes, and it can happen in times of stress, it can and great emotional extremes, and it certainly happens in the satanic rituals and what have you, because I've had described to me so many times by people who've taken part in these rituals, most of them against their will, but some of them who've eventually saw the light, who have described to me how the participants in these major satanic rituals shift into a reptilian form. It's not only reptilian, but this seems to be the dominant one. And so what's happening is the observer is looking at one of these dual hybrid fields, and they're reading the human field. So they see a human. But then there's an information shift, not a physical shift, an information shift. And now they're reading the non-human or reptilian field. And to the observer decoding this, the person in front of them has shifted from a solid human body to a solid reptilian body. But that's not what's happened. There's been an information shift. And as I said in last week's or the week before's spaces here with Bart, that the theme of the Avatar movie and movies now is very symbolic, even on the point of literal, in terms of what's happening. You know, for people who haven't seen that movie, I'm sure most people have, you had the American military who wanted to infiltrate this blue people Navi society on this, I think it was called Pandora moon, because they wanted the resources on the moon, on that moon. But they knew that if they tried to infiltrate the Navi society while looking human, they got no chance. It's like, who's this? Who are you? So instead, they take on an outer shell that looks like the Navi, and they sought to infiltrate Navi society by appearing to the Navi to be one of them. And that's what's happening with this reptilian manipulation. They're
Hey,
hiding
David.
behind apparent human form when they're
I
not
actually,
actually human.
I just want to add on what David was saying, that how some people can pick up on things because of the information they're getting, whether it be through numerology, astrology, tarot, whatever. I'd like to say that's true, but to add a layer on top of that, let's just take David for instance. If I'm saying your birthday wrong, please correct me. The man's born on the 29th, 2 and 9 is 11. That's a master number. So someone who's born on the 11th, someone who's born on the 29th, someone who's born on the 22nd, someone who's a 33 life path like Jake, they would be able to pick up on things a lot quicker than most people in society who do not have those frequencies. Because when you're an 11, a 22, or a 33, that basically indicates that you're an old soul. You've been reincarnated quite a few times to actually earn that right. So when you actually have that frequency, you can tap into the matrix a lot quicker than most people. The same reason they called COVID a pandemic on the 11th, same reason they attacked America on 9/11, for the reason to get emotional energy out of people, to invest that energy into this. So that's pretty much what David's talking about. Now, when it comes to other subjects, I always find it interesting that you are the one who is known for the reptilians and the grays and things of that matter. I mean, I've heard people talk about Pleiadians and all sorts of stuff. But it's all, to me, it's very interesting that the person who made reptilians quote unquote famous to mainstream is born 1952, the year of the dragon. I always found that very interesting. So if there was somebody to make some information with that, whether it be true or untrue, mainstream, it would be someone born in a dragon year. And of course, we add the 29 into you being an old soul. So it all makes sense to me. If people want to add on to that,
Gary,
go ahead.
I know, Gary, you got into, correct me if I'm wrong, you got into numerology because of 9/11. And, David has been speaking about frequencies and information fields. And, 9/11, as you know, Gary, had a significant amount of numerology. David, Gary, or anyone else who wants to chime in, do you believe that, like, Gary, what are your thoughts on the matrix as far as the energetic structure of it?
Well, I believe this matrix is like an energy prison, and karma is like the anchor. You honestly have to live a righteous life, because if you don't, you have karma attached to your soul, and that could keep you down for many, many souls and many reincarnations. Most people need to understand what their life mission is, and don't let, I'm not a big religious guy. I'm not big into that, but I do understand why most people need religion, because most people quite freely need something to fear. And if they don't fear something, all of a sudden they start running wild, LGBT, and all that other nonsense. So when it comes down to it, energy matters, but the elite picked 9/11 for a reason. The Rothschilds, one of the things I wanted to mention to you, David, is, the biggest alien, story of all time is Roswell. Roswell starts with RO, just like Rothschild, just like Rockefeller starts with RO. R and O is, together is 33. So it shows you, just like Royal. So it shows you what,
No,
if you understand how the energies work, you understand exactly how the elite move.
in terms of the rituals of Eyes Wide Shut, I think that was a phenomenal film. But of course, if you look at the background to it, a chunk of it was taken out, and
The child
the
sacrifice scene
director
was taken out.
died after the thing was seen by the, I think it was Warner Brothers, and it's would love to know what was in the 25 minutes, because what was left in it was a real um, symbol of what's going on in the background. these entities that I talk about, religion describes them. You've got Christianity talking about demons and Satan. You've got Islam talking about Shaitan, Iblis, and the jinn. You've got the Gnostics talking about Yoda-Baoth and the demiurge, the version of the devil, and archons, which is Greek for rulers, and so on. And so it goes on. All these different cultures have this common theme of a negative force manipulating human society from the hidden. And I started to realize, as I was researching all this, that the gods, as they were perceived, that were worshipped by the ancients and to whom they did sacrificial rituals, were the same, quote, gods that the rich and famous of today are doing their satanic rituals to, in a way that was symbolized in Eyes Wide Shut. So my next question was, why are they doing rituals, for a start, ancient and modern? And if it's a offering to the gods, then why? What do the gods get out of it? And you realize that what's happening is that these entities just outside of human sight in the what's called the astral dimension, they are feeding off low vibrational human energy. They themselves are in a very low vibrational state because, I mean, this is mainstream science again. When we feel emotion or when we think, the nature of the thought and the nature of the emotion is generating an energy, a frequency. Fear and anxiety and depression, all these things, anger, hatred, they're all low vibrational frequencies. Whereas love and joy and happiness and peace of much higher frequencies. So if you are these demonic, quote, gods, lunatics, that are feeding off human energy, then you have to manipulate humans to generate the energy that you can absorb. Otherwise, just like radio stations, the joy and love and all these things, you're not going to be able to absorb that. You don't want that in the world. You want low vibrational human emotion. And so when the Morpheus character in the Matrix held up a battery and said that the Matrix is a computer-generated dream world built to turn humans into one of these, it was a profound truth. But the point about the rituals and Eyes Wide Shut is that the offering to the gods is the frequency terror of the victim. So they build up the terror in the victim through these rituals. They're still doing the same rituals now. They were basically doing a long, long time ago, centuries ago, more than centuries ago, in Babylon, etc. And as the terror is built up, these entities are feeding off that terror, that frequency, and that's the offering to the gods, the sacrifice to the gods. Meanwhile, this frequency impact on the holographic level of the body is triggering a adrenaline in the blood, which is what the Satanists in our reality conducting the ritual, that's what they drink and they get a high on it. It's like a drug. This is where all the whole adrenochrome thing comes from. So what was symbolized in Eyes Wide Shut, obviously a very mild version of it because of, you had to get it out, Stanley Kubrick. But it was very symbolic of what's going on in the background and how all these rich and famous, what I call cultists, behind this global manipulation and the direction of the world towards dystopia, that's what they're doing in secret.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
Gary, are you back?
Yeah, I'm back. I'd like to have give Jake some time. I'd just say one thing. There is one frequency above love, and that's knowledge. So I'd like to put that out there. But go ahead, Jake.
So I just want to start by saying that what David's talking about regarding, like, you know, the shape shifting and all that stuff, it has a lot to do with, because reality is a hologram, and because the human body has an electromagnetic field that surrounds it, we are deeply interconnected to that hologram through things like quantum entanglement. And reality itself is based on infinitely nested electromagnetic fields. The Earth gets its electromagnetic field from the sun. We get our electromagnetic field from the Earth. The sun gets its electromagnetic field from the galaxy from the universe, etc. Now, each of these stars that are in the galaxy are all quantum entangled with one another. And this is part of the reason why they choose to do these rituals, whether it be sex magic rituals or sacrifice rituals or whatever, during certain astrological alignments and certain star alignments, etc., certain phases of the moon, certain phases of the sun, etc. You know, equinoxes, solstices, Halloween, etc. Now, because they're doing it at these days and at these times, let's say, for example, with sex magic rituals, what they are doing is they are doing these rituals so that they can conceive their children during this ritual. And this ritual is affecting the quantum realm. It is affecting the quantum entangled universe, so that one of these entities from this other dimension can move through these windows that are in space and time, that are open during these times of astrological alignments, full moons, etc. And when these entities come into these physical bodies, and they are doing so based on the ritual within the circle, within the, you know, the ritual area that is affecting the quantum realm. So it's almost like they're opening up a portal or a doorway for these entities to come from this other dimension into this dimension. Now, it's also important to note here that a lot of these families have royal bloodlines, which means that their DNA is attuned to these dimensions and have been attuned to them for millennia. So when we talk about like this idea of shape shifting or something like that, what we're kind of talking about is this electromagnetic field that surrounds the body is a electromagnetic field that is not per se quote unquote human, because all the way down to a DNA level, we are sending and receiving light and information. If you look into the Heart Math Institute, the antenna on the DNA, etc., then what has happened is that these antenna on the DNA and the DNA itself are attuned to this other frequency, to this other dimension that is connected to these other star systems, which are essentially different planes of consciousness or different dimensions. So when they do these sex magic rituals or when they do these sacrifice rituals, they are either taking energy from that other dimension to bring it into ours, or taking energy from our dimension and sending it to theirs. And this is how this cycle is repeated. And a lot of the time they're doing these things on electromagnetic ley lines. And because they're doing them on electromagnetic ley lines, they are affecting the quantum entangled electromagnetic field of Earth and all the galaxy, all the universe. So all of this stuff intertwines in one way or another. When we talk about shape-shifting, what we're talking about is the electromagnetic field that surrounds the body ends up transforming into its true form, which is this other dimensional world. Some people call them reptilians. I prefer to call them demonic entities. And when people do these sacrifice rituals and stuff like that, when they get into Satanism, the occult, the Luciferian side of things, what they're actually doing is they are allowing, especially when they move up in a higher position, they're allowing these demonic entities to possess their bodies. And in the process, they basically become more and more quote unquote reptilian or more and more demonic. And that's why as they move higher and higher up into the satanic pyramid, they have to do more and more evil rituals so that they can, like what David was saying, they can produce more and more loosh or more of this negative energy that gets sent back to the dimension from whence they came. And it also lowers the frequency of the planet, of the collective human consciousness, and it kind of keeps us below this glass ceiling of self-awareness that has been created by these individuals for millennia.
So you cooking, brother. I just like to add when it comes down to that, I believe in fourth dimensional beings. I'm not too sold on the other things. I believe that the real elite are not Satanists. I believe that the puppet elite, the people who actually think they can get magical powers by doing satanic rituals, I believe they're powerful, but they're still puppets. I do not believe the very, very top of the food chain messes with any of this nonsense, because when I look at everything they do, you know, pineal gland, Bohemian Grove, being right by the crown, the root chakra with the redwood, I basically see them basically thinking they can do something, but they're not the real elite. The people who practice in this Satanism and all this other nonsense, they're not the real elite. I just want to put that out there.
I'd be curious to get David's feedback on what I just said.
100%.
Hi. Well, I missed a lot of things there because my internet's been on, but you've been off. So you've just come back on. I heard Jake speaking a few minutes ago, and I absolutely spot on with him on that. Well, the real elite is not interacting with these demonic entities, and I would also call them that, because reptilian is only part of it. I think to be in a state of low vibrational psychopathy on a scale that beggars belief, you are in that very low vibrational realm, and so whether the elite of the elite in the background are doing these satanic rituals is, well, people have different opinions on that. But in terms of their basic mentality, they make psychopaths look like Mary Poppins. And it's one of the things that I've been trying to get across over the decades, is the scale of inverted evil that we're dealing with. And I would define evil as an absence of love, or an inversion of love. And if you look at the world, it's all inverted. Whether you look at politics, whether you look at education, science, any of it, it's all inverted. If you want to find the truth about anything, then if you invert what the authorities are telling you about any subject, the truth, than if you just believe what they say. So the whole world is inverted. I mean, how can you have people dying of hunger in a world of plenty? How can you have the suffering and the war that we have, which the vast majority of the human population don't want, but we get it anyway? The whole thing's inverted. If it wasn't for this manipulation, this world would be a very, very different place. Whether they're doing the rituals or not, they're still in a very, very demonic state of being, and to the point where they're not just capable of doing what most people would say, oh, no one would do that. Not only capable of doing it, they are doing it, but they get off on it. They get a rush from suffering, not least because the suffering generates the energy that they feed off. There's so much we don't know. That's the point. The one thing you know is whatever you think you know, there's always more to know. And as we move on, we'll find out more and more and more and more. But the foundation of it is we're dealing with a very extreme psychopathic intent and mentality. And that's why the world is as it is, because we allow it to happen by believing and acting upon the diktats of authority instead of saying, no, we're not doing it.
Well, and that makes me wonder, it makes me think about what happened with the Aztecs, because they were doing these human sacrifices on top of the pyramids, and they worshipped, Kukulkan, the reptilian, the flying, serpent. And so to me, it's like, well, how many other locations was this stuff going on? I mean, we look into the Baal or Moloch sacrifices in the Middle East, etc. And the fact that the pyramids in Mesoamerica were built on ley lines, and they were doing these human sacrifices on ley lines. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Aztecs bragged that they sacrificed 80,000 people across their empire in a single day. Now think about what that would do to feed this low frequency entity, or these low frequency entities. Were the priests and the kings and stuff of the Aztec Empire possessed by these reptilian or demonic entities, and were they getting off on all of this? Because what did they say that the gods, quote unquote, or Kukulkan wanted? They wanted blood.
And
Yeah, and
a question.
Sorry.
I would just say, sorry, someone else coming in. I'll leave the
Yeah,
floor.
no, I was asking a question for Jake and David and
Oh,
whoever
okay.
else wants to chime in. What do you believe the main purpose of these rituals are? Is it to effectuate a pattern, an energetic pattern? What are they benefiting from this?
Tap into a frequency. They're trying to tap into a frequency when you do certain shapes, colors, dates. You're trying to tap into a certain frequency. For instance, in the San Francisco area is basically the root chakra of the world. Root chakra represents sexuality. And if you notice, the earth tells you that because there's a certain type of tree that grows there called a redwood. And that's where all these people go, these elite go in the Bohemian Grove to do all their little sex rituals and stuff like that, which Alex Jones exposed. Again, born on the 11th, like David's born on the 29th, 29 is 11. So you always see the same pattern. So they knew, I mean, you have to understand who we're dealing with. Most people say, how do we defeat them? You don't even understand numerology, astrology. How can you defeat them? They picked San Francisco to corrupt San Francisco because that is the root chakra of the world. Red is basically the number of sexuality. That's why in the movie The Matrix, you have the woman in red. So it's a constant pattern with these people. So they knew if they corrupted the basic root chakra, the sexual chakra of the earth in San Francisco, it would spread. And that's exactly what happened with LGBT homosexual movement. It's the exact, if you look at the LGBT flag, it's the exact inverted, as David was speaking with, this is all inverted. It's the exact inverted colors of the rainbow. Because in the rainbow, the root in the chakra system, the root chakra is red. It's on the bottom. But in LGBT, it's on the top. What that basically symbolizes is they put lust over everything else. And the main purpose is you have to break down the family unit. You have to understand that is the main purpose of all of this. Because when you break down the family unit, then the Rothschilds and whoever controls them, if there is somebody, then they can take the kids at birth. And once you take the kids at birth, that's checkmate. So that's what I believe it's all about.
Well, and yes, there is a reason for these rituals. One of them is they are opening essentially a portal or a vortex in space-time. And they are opening a portal or a vortex either to send or to receive energy from or to another dimension. And in the process, they end up affecting the quantum entangled universe. They end up affecting the collective psyche of humanity. And that is ultimately the goal. That's why I say the war that we are in is a war for the mind. The battlefield is the hearts and the minds of humanity, because the hearts and the minds of humanity are interconnected to the ley lines, which affect our hearts and our minds, our thoughts and our emotions, which are electromagnetic frequencies. That's why DC and all of the state capitals in the United States, as well as the Vatican and the London Palace, are built on ley lines. That's why they have
100%.
obelisks. That's why they have obelisks and stuff, because they are literally trying to affect the collective mind of humanity so they can control our collective consciousness. And in controlling our collective consciousness, not only do they control the destiny of humanity as a whole, but they control the fate of the planet. And so if we look at all of these locations, the Capitol building, the DC, the Vatican, London Palace, if we look at them almost like as if they have a satanic pentagram painted on top of them, and in the case of DC, it kind of does, then you envision all of the energy that is on this planet, all of the life force and the souls getting sucked into this abyss and being transported to a low frequency dimension to feed otherworldly, evil, demonic entities that have been plaguing this planet for thousands of years, you will begin to fathom and grasp the totality of the problem.
Can we get Ruby to chime in?
Yeah, I'd
Ruby.
love to hear from Ruby. And then after Ruby, Derek as well has had his hand up. But yeah, would love to hear from Ruby on this.
Ruby, what's up, Ruby?
Yeah, I've got a really good question for David. So, David, on September 21st, 1987, in the address to the 42nd session of the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Ronald Reagan said, "I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world." So, David, I'd love to hear your perspective on how Project Bluebeam will take place, which, as you know, is the government's plan to fake an alien invasion for the purpose of establishing a one world government, and so with so much alleged disclosure being released from US Congress recently, David, I'd love to know, how can we tell what is authentic alien depiction versus what is illusion and intentional manipulation by the US government?
Well, I think if it's coming out of the US government, then the intent will not be for the benefit of humanity. And you're absolutely right. When I was traveling around America from 1996, I first went there talking about these things. I met a load of whistleblowers, military intelligence whistleblowers, as I traveled around. Because, they're on the inside. They want a vehicle to get it out. And that's why they talk to people like us. And it was very clear that the American military have what we call flying saucers. And this is a really important point. The cutting edge of technological possibility is always light years behind the cutting edge in the public arena that it seems to be. Because if you can create a false perception of the cutting edge of technology, then you can use technology way beyond that to manipulate, and the population will dismiss any suggestion that that's going on because their perception is the cutting edge of technology they see in the public arena is the real cutting edge. It's not. So there's it's clear that a lot of these craft that are flown around, and because it's beyond the perception of where the technological cutting edge is, immediately you see them, people go, it's an alien craft. Well, not necessarily so. I'm not saying they don't exist, but I'm saying that we have to be a bit streetwise and a bit more subtle here in the way the manipulation goes on. And I must say that during the 1990s, when I was involved in researching all this, particularly, the authorities were just waving their hand and laughing. They were saying that, yeah, it's just a weather balloon. Oh, yeah, you mean little green men. That's what you mean, innit? And all this nonsense. And this has gone on, of course, decade after decade, until, as you rightly point out, in very recent times, suddenly the American military are releasing footage they say are craft that they can't explain. We've had these whistleblowers, and I'd like to meet them personally before I take them seriously, in Congress on Capitol Hill, that have come out and said, oh, this is happening, and they've got alien bodies and all this stuff. So suddenly what they were suppressing and dismissing and ridiculing is now, okay, actually, this may be happening. So I do think we have to be very, very careful on what's happening here, because this change of tack is very obvious and blatant. And if they are starting to move us eventually towards the idea that there's an alien invasion, and what would that mean? Taking that Reagan quote, that would mean that people would come together. Basically, when a country has a war, like Israel now, it's created a war cabinet, which are different elements of different political persuasions coming together in unity in a war cabinet. Well, if we had if we were sold an alien invasion, then we would have a global war cabinet. And what would that be? That would be a world government, which is exactly what the whole process of centralizing power has been leading to all along. So we have to be very careful about this. And I think you're very, very wise to note the things that you do. And we'll see where it goes. But it's starting to look that way in terms of the way the whole mentality and approach of the authorities like the Pentagon have taken. And I would just say, before we leave the subjects we've just been talking about with Jake and Gary, etc. This I did a two-part documentary for Iconic, which went out last Christmas, New Year. It was called Albion, Heart of the World, and it was about the ley line system. And this is very, very important, because if you're going to keep your target population, your target consciousness mind, in other words, in a low vibrational state, then this field, think Wi-Fi again, this field of electromagnetic information has to be kept in a low vibrational state, because we are interacting with it all the time. You know, we are in the midst of an electromagnetic Wi-Fi type field, and we are interacting with it. It's affecting us, and we, with our consciousness, thought, emotion, are affecting it. And the idea is to keep this field in a low vibrational state, because that is impacting on our vibrational state all the time. And if you're not in your power so that you can resist that impact, then you get pulled into a low vibrational state as well. And this ley line system is basically a holographic version, as in holographic law, which is as above, so below. Everything is in a hologram is a smaller version of the whole. So the body has its system of ley lines, which we call meridians in the acupuncture system. And so that information is passing around the body. And when the information gets skewed, passing around the body, we call that illness, dis-ease, disharmony in the body caused by disharmony in the information that's circulating around the body. And the planet is the same, because it's all holographic. Therefore, every level operates in basically the same way. If you can skew the ley line system, if you can put it in a low vibrational state and you can put it in a disharmonious, imbalanced state, well, that is massively impacting on the state of the field of which that is a part. And so when they do the rituals, as Jake was talking about, at these ley line points, and they're points where lots of lines cross, and they create a vortex when there's a few lines cross, 2 lines, 3 lines. But where you get massive centers of ley lines crossing, it creates a massively powerful vortex. And in many ways, that's where an interdimensional travel can take place, if you like, because at these massive vortex points, the difference between our reality and the energetic frequency reality, what we call the astral, gets thinned out, and therefore you can interact with, quote, the gods at these big major vortex points in ways you can't elsewhere. And what the ancients did is they built their big stone circles, etc., Stonehenge, Avebury, and others around the world, and had their focus points of ritual actually at these ley line points where these massive vortexes are. And what happened then, just to take it on, is that when Christianity came along, one of two things happened. Some people in the Christian belief system wanted to suppress these so-called pagan sites, which the pre-Christians were focused upon. They wanted to suppress it, so they put churches on it. And others who were a bit more streetwise about what this energy was, they wanted to tap into that energy, and they put churches on it. And so some of these great cathedrals and churches of the world are actually on ley line points. The Freemasons put their major temples on ley line points, these vortex points, and therefore they are suppressing the frequency nature of the, I mean, if you're going to sacrifice someone at one of these vortex points, what's that going to do to the energy? It's going to lower the frequency massively. And that's what one of the key reasons that they're doing it.
To push back on what he was saying, would you agree, just to go back to the alien thing, that Project Bluebeam, something most people know about, is something that is most likely going to happen?
Well, for people who haven't come across Project Bluebeam, it was exposed in the 1990s by a guy called Serge Monast, a Canadian investigative journalist who died in the midst of it. Actually, as I remember, he died of a heart attack in 51, was it? In his 50s anyway, the day after he'd spent a night in jail because of what he was doing, it would seem. And what he said was that there would be a fake alien invasion, and they would use, again, here we go again, holographic technology to project things in the sky that people would take to be real. And, you know, like I said earlier about
Jesus, Muhammad, religious figures is most likely what they will project to get the people to believe this is something that's real, correct?
Exactly.
This would be a Deus ex machina moment where we think a salvation or savior of some sort has come. They've already preconditioned us to believe this subconsciously with religion, whether we believe it or not. You know, if it happens using graphic technology, we'll fall.
I'll tell you right now, whether you believe in Jesus or not, if you see Jesus in the sky, most people are going to start believing. Same thing with Muhammad.
Yeah, exactly that. And as I was just going to say, you know, I mentioned a little while ago that the technological development that we're seeing, the technological explosion, is mimicking our reality and the way we decode it. Well, what's happening with holographics is they're getting closer and closer to the point where you won't be able to tell the difference between the holographic reality we experience as the human realm and the holographic reality that is technologically projected. And you're absolutely right. And, you know, what I would say, I mean, I might upset some people that believe in religion here, but, and you know, I have no problem people believing anything. That's their business, not mine. But if we take on board the fact that visible light, which is the only frequency band that we can see, so that's how all our visible reality is a ludicrously narrow band of frequency, then an infinity exists beyond it, then for sure, whatever we think we know, there's always more to know. And what religions do is they build a wall around perception. Now, we were talking earlier about the way that we have to be kept in a low vibrational state. Well, perception, if you control perception, you not only control behavior, which comes from perception, you control the vibrational state. Because if you believe that you are little me and have no power, then you're going to be in a low vibrational state by just perceiving that that's who you are. So perception is the stadium on which all of this is played out. Gary talked about it, about the mind. Exactly, that's the perception. That's the stadium. And so religions, they build walls around a belief system, and they're not saying whatever we know, there's always more to know. They're basically saying this is all you need to know. And then you create this religion with a belief system. You create this religion with a belief system, and then you play them off against each other and you divide and rule. And, you know, I think what religions have is valid things to say. And that's good. There's things that Christianity talks about that I agree with, and things that others talk about that I agree with, and lots that I don't. So they have validity in the sense of they're saying things that I think have validity. But if you take the whole package and repel all borders, you're stopping yourself moving on into greater swathes of knowledge. Because if where knowledge is taking you, where information is taking you, breaches the walls of the religion, then you're no longer a Christian anymore. You're no longer a Muslim anymore. You're no longer a Hindu anymore. And the pressure to conform in those societies is very powerful. And so I think religion, not spirituality, but I think religion, a perceptual prison cell to keep people from exploring those massive infinite realms of what we don't know.
It's also a two-sided coin, David, because if you look about all the degeneracy that's going on, single mothers raising kids in poverty, when you look at all the rainbow movements around the world, religion held that in check. So here's the thing. I believe that when a society is degenerate, Islam, Christianity can be extremely useful. But once a society has their stuff together, like just to make an example, in the 1950s, then I believe religion starts holding people back. It's like anything else. Like the government is a necessary evil. So I think religion is the same way. When you have a population of people who are low IQ, who do not have a mother and father in the home, when you have a population that doesn't get breastfed, let's not forget, we live in a time where there's more evolved people than any time in human history. We also live in a time, because of yin yang, there's more devolved people at any time in human history. So one of the things you can do, and this is to the women out there who are listening, breastfeed your kids. That raises 10 IQ points to them. That is something you can do to help your people, to help your family prosper. So again, I don't think it's possible to change everything, but you can change from within. Like, for instance, when the vaccine was coming out, I was one of the loudest in the world, got suspended 18 times over it. But the fact of the matter is this: the information got out, and at the end of the day, you just want to make this world a better place, leaving it than you came in. That's all you can do.
Well, and that's why every Saturday at noon here in Arizona, I go down to the Arizona State Capitol and I pray on the ley lines. I do a guided meditation every Saturday that you can tune into on X or Twitter, where we're raising the consciousness, because there's nobody in the buildings that are being used to control our hearts and our minds, that are being used to write law. So when we go down to the ley lines and we do these prayers and these guided meditations, we have essentially taken control of the ley lines and are using them in a positive way to raise collective consciousness.
So is that in fact what you were doing in your when you were in the Congress there? Were you actually communicating on a PowerPoint there?
Yeah, so one of the biggest reasons I went to DC was because I went on December 12th of 2020 as well for the second Mega Million March, but also on January 6th, because if there's going to be 1 million people assembled on the ley lines, then that is going to be a very powerful surge of awakening energy on the ley lines. And when I was in the Senate chamber on the upper terrace, I sang my shamanic song. In fact, one of the most iconic photographs that has circulated the globe was at the climax of my shamanic song, where I was when I was singing. And so the fact that was the image that went around the world, I thought was rather interesting. Yes, I was using the opportunity to dispel any evil or any negative energy that was in that harmonic chamber that is built on the ley lines. And then notice I also said a prayer in that chamber. So shamanically, what it was about was basically bringing God into that space, bringing the divine creator's presence into that space, because I'm of the belief that there is a lot of negative energy and a lot of low frequency vibrations that have taken place in that chamber. And because sound ends up affecting the spin of quantum particles, because our body emits things like scalar waves and stuff like that, which affect the ley lines, by singing my shamanic song and dispelling and evoking, that means getting rid of all the negativity and all the demonic spirits and stuff like that in that chamber. And then by saying the prayer, I consecrated that space. I made that space sacred once again for God.
Well, you certainly lanced a boil that day, and God bless you for raising awareness as you did. You know, but anyway, it's marvelous to have all these extraordinary people here taking a look at what's going on.
Capitalism is a beautiful thing, man. That's how things like this are possible.
100%.
So, Derek has had his hand up for a while. Would love to get to you, Derek. How's it going?
Good, man. Hey, I will have to leave fairly soon, but I just wanted to go back to when I originally raised my hand about Eyes Wide Shut. I had the pleasure of, at the time I was managing Cuba Gooding Jr., and we were doing promotion for Jerry Maguire, which obviously was Tom Cruise. So Tom Cruise had an agreement with Stanley Kubrick that he would be able to take time off from Eyes Wide Shut to promote Jerry Maguire. So during that promotion time that I was traveling around on Tom's jet with Tom and Nick, I got to go into the Dorchester Hotel. David, you'll appreciate that. You know the hotel very well, and probably the bar. I sat in the bar with Stanley Kubrick and another crazy director, Tim Burton, Tom Cruise, Nicole, Cuba on my left, and Cuba's assistant. And we just sat in there. And when we got in there, Stanley Kubrick and Tim Burton had already been in there for probably 2 hours. So they were a little bit liquored up already. And this was during a break for Kubrick. Now, understand that Kubrick is one of the most detailed and meticulous directors ever. He will shoot the same scene 300 times if he has to. He exhausts his actors. I heard lots of stories from Tom and Nick about Kubrick. Now, I got to ask Kubrick to his face because Tom gave me a copy of the screenplay, and I read the entire screenplay. And I was asking him what this movie was about because at the time I wasn't really necessarily aware. This is 1996. And I was aware like how Hollywood worked because I managed an A-list actor. It was a strange conversation, but I asked Stanley, I said, what's this movie about? And he basically said, it's about exposing the evil of this world and everybody that runs this thing. And he went on to talk about these rituals that everybody's talking about. And he said, these things are conducted and they get worse and worse and worse as you progress. And he was telling me about these things. And Tim Burton said, oh, are you going to tell him about the moon landing? And Tom Cruise said, what? What about the moon landing? And he goes, go ahead, tell him that I shot the moon landing. Go ahead and say it to them. And he did, right to my face. So if you doubt my story and know that I was there during that time, I can post up in the nest a video that we made during the promotion of the movie Jerry Maguire called Europa. And this is, it's just a trailer, but I was there in England with Stanley Kubrick and I got to talk to him for probably an hour and a half. A very, very fascinating gentleman, gone very, very controversial. And if you know anything about how he has hidden secrets and truths within his movies, do a little bit of background study on The Shining and how he was disclosing the moon landing within The Shining. There's lots of things to that guy. And it was a very, very interesting conversation. I wouldn't have believed it unless the guy said it right to my face. I would have said that I was a complete nutcase. But I'll post that promotional video up in the nest so you guys can see. But yeah, that took place.
Thank you for that, Derek.
Hold on. Since he was in that sphere, are you still in that sphere or in Hollywood or not?
No, not even
okay,
close.
now
that's that's why I live in Mexico.
Okay, brother.
I live in Mexico because when you leave these people, they come for you.
Okay, so is it safe to say that without being some kind of sexual deviant, it's very difficult to make it to the top?
You definitely have to participate in all the festivities. How about that?
Because they have to have evidence in case you want to flip on them, correct?
That's what Epstein's about. It's a blackmail operation.
It was a honeypot operation to get politicians to do what Mossad wanted, and they fuck with the wrong guy when they went after Donald Trump. He was higher up the food chain.
And keep in mind, everybody, that Luciferianism is very, very real, and they are required to tell you the truth. That's why there's truth in the religions and truth in everything. They're required to tell you the truth, but they also lie to you. It's called plausible deniability. So they could say, hey, we told you the truth and we told you the lie. You accepted the lie because it was more convenient.
The call it Luciferian is one thing, but you could also say it's basically they understand how karma works. And if they tell someone they're doing something and then they do it, their karma's released because they actually told them. So I'm not sure if that's Luciferian or if that's just how the system of the matrix and karma works itself. It's a little bit different.
Well, it's hard to say, but David, I just wanted to quickly ask David. David, so just so you know, you're familiar with that bar at the Dorchester, right?
I think the reptilians have attacked Sir Icke again. He dropped off. Up there, he's back again. You might have to repeat your question.
Oh, I just wanted to know, David, are you familiar with the Dorchester? Oh, he's gonna.
No, I don't.
David, are you familiar with the Dorchester?
No, I don't go into flash hotels like that. But, I tell you what, that story I was absolutely fascinated by because it confirms what I've come across. And have you seen a DVD? I think you can see it on the internet now. It's by a friend of mine in America who's a movie maker or a filmmaker called Jay Weiner.
I know it very well.
Yeah, and his two well, they were DVDs when I saw them. He sent them to me. One was about Stanley Kubrick hoaxing the moon landings, basically, and also The Shining and how Kubrick was giving you, if you knew what the symbolism was, he was telling you that he did the moon landings. And what I found,
he was disclosing the whole
yeah,
thing through The Shining, and it pissed off. Because he was making Stephen King's movie. And he pissed off Stephen King so bad because he was changing the story to a degree. Yeah, totally. 100% fact.
Yeah, and what I found...
David, recently I was chatting with an old friend of yours, and something they said was fascinating to me, and that was that we don't quite know who Trump is, and we're quite stumped by that. You know, they were saying, you know, is he Knight of Malta? You know, what is he? I would love to get your take on what club Trump belongs to.
Well, that's a long story with a lot of background. But what I would say is, you know, we've got to be very, very careful about politics, and we've got to be very careful about looking for saviors. If people want saviors, they should find themselves a mirror. We've got 8 billion people in the world, and the number of people in full knowledge that are directing it towards this dystopia is tiny by comparison. So it's not about the power of this demonic force, if you like, to impose its will. It's the power of acquiescence by the population that's allowing this to happen, because clearly it couldn't happen unless enormous numbers of the population acquiesced, either through believing whatever they're told by authority, or by not believing it, not really wanting to do what authority says, but being too frightened of not doing it because of the perceived consequences, so they do it anyway. Those two mentalities have been behind every tyranny in history. That's what's allowed it to happen. And what I would be very careful about with people is looking at political saviors in the sense that what they do is buy time. You know, you can say, okay, I'm going to give my power away now to this politician who's telling me what I want to hear, and therefore I'm going to let him sort it for the next 4 years or so. And at the end, when it's still not sorted or anything like, then 4 years have passed whereby this agenda has moved on because it's not been challenged in the way it needs to be challenged, which is that we, the population, cease to cooperate with our own enslavement. Now, you know, if you look at the Democrats and you look at the Republicans in the United States, same with the Labour Party and the Conservative Party in Britain, they are moving towards the same agenda. They're just doing it at different speeds. because the Republicans, like the Conservative Party in Britain, they have a natural base that doesn't want this crap that's going on. And so they have to use different rhetoric. They have to be more circumspect in what they do. But it still moves on in the direction that this agenda wants. It just does it more slowly. So when you've got the Biden administration, which was obviously what was going to happen when he came in, and you've got the Labour Party under a guy called Keir Starmer, a trilateral commission member, by the way, who leads the Labour Party in this country and is highly likely, as the polls stand, to be the next prime minister. They don't have the same pushback, so they can move things forward very, very much quicker. So there is some benefit in having a political party there that has this pushback, because then it moves slower, but it's still going to get there. What it will stop it getting there is the population ceasing to acquiesce and cooperate with their own enslavement. That's what's going to do it. And that comes back, as Gary was talking about, that comes back to mind. It comes back to grasping what's going on and understanding that authority has no power that we don't give it. We experience authority with it imposing its will upon us. But what we don't realize is that power to impose has come from the power we give it in the form of acquiescence. So the real answer to bringing this house of cards down, because that's all it is the public ceasing to cooperate with their own enslavement. And we need to be streetwise about politics to the point where, okay, it will move slower under this than it will move faster under them, but it will still get there. And we're not going to give our power away to a politician to sort it, because we have the power to sort it.
And that's exactly why they want to. That's exactly why they want to break the family unit. I'm just showing you how it goes from spiritual to material, because everything he just talked about right there, they are breaking the family unit to get the process moving quicker and quicker. Because if you don't have a family member to depend on, if you don't have a mom and dad, guess what? It's big daddy government. So this is how the actual system works.
And that's why I'm running for Congress, just saying, because I'm not a politician and there are no strings on me.
Hey, Gary, weren't you running for president?
I'm getting there.
We have
all right. So listen,
we have GG33 Jake running for Congress. We'll support him. Have 100%. Everyone in this room, if you know people in Arizona, the great state of Arizona, and that's because the 33-year-old life path can make things happen. Go ahead.
Beautiful. All right. So we got a couple of people with their hands up. We're going to go to Reptile, then Sherry.
Reptile, that's your David. This is your biggest supporter of all time, right here.
Hey,
David. Hey, Gary.
Hello,
I'm a huge supporter of David Icke. It's an absolute honor, mate. And just listening to you speak again, it kind of goes to show that David's so much more than just the reptilian thing. And I just finished reading The Trap, and it's amazing. But I've got to say just a couple of things. We look back throughout history, this reptilian idea. You go back to the Emerald Tablets, Credo Mutwa with the Shitahuri, Quetzalcoatl, the Nagas, even the Old Testament. It speaks all about these serpent-like gods. They are here, and the creation of those hybrids explains so much about why they did things behind the scenes. But I want to ask just two things, David, because again, I could talk to you all day. The waking up process, look at how far things have come now. You speak about when you'd go around the world, people wouldn't show up. Now, look, you come into a Twitter space, there's thousands and thousands of people. The waking up that's happening, and when we see stuff with like Israel, Palestine, the garbage is still going on. But I'd just like you to talk about two things. One is the waking up process and what's going on around the world. And I've got to ask again, stuff like that's in the books like Children of the Matrix, The Biggest Secret, about Bush Senior, the royal families, what people like Philip Eugene de Rothschilds, kids and stuff were telling you. Just give everyone a taste about what actually happens at these rituals with some of the most powerful, influential people on the planet. But David, it's an honor, brother. Thank you, mate. Thanks for all you do.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, well, waking up I have a real perspective on this because I've been doing it for so long, since 1990. I can appreciate the scale of wake up that's going on. And if people are quite new to this, they will say, and I absolutely understand it, more people should be waking up. And the more, the merrier, of course. But if you contrast where we are to where we were, say, in 1990 and before, then the wake up now is fantastic. And what is waking up? For me, we have a mind. I call it the five sense mind, and that is programmed to perceive reality purely through the five senses. So that mentality, and it dominates science and academia, will say, can I see it, touch it, taste it, hear it? Therefore, it must exist then. And if I can't, then it can't exist. That's the five sense mentality. And that's the state of mind that basically runs the world in terms of the population's perception of reality, of everything, and how it judges whether something's credible or not credible. And it's breaching that mind. I mean, it's interesting when you look at these various religions around the world, not least in the East, but others too. And they say that to reach a point of enlightenment, you have to go beyond mind. So my question was, okay, so what's this mind then that you have to get across to become enlightened? And it's this five sense mind. It's like a program. It's like a software program. And once you breach its walls, and how do you do that? You realize that whatever you know, there's always more to know. That immediately, that understanding takes you beyond the walls of the five sense mind, which is telling you, no, this is all you need to know. And once the process starts, it starts to expand, it gets faster, it expands and expands and expands. And that's the wake up. And that's why people in so many greater numbers now are starting to see the world in a totally different way. They might start off that, okay, there's political manipulation and this financial manipulation, and the people that are running the world are not the people that seem to be running the world officially, like presidents and prime ministers. And you get to that level. But then you keep going, and then you start to realize the biggest awakening, which is we're not our bodies. We're not even our five sense minds. We are consciousness. We are an expression of an infinite field of consciousness. And we can tap into that consciousness to whatever expansive level we choose. And it's not that you have to kind of seek enlightenment. Because we are enlightened, we are that consciousness. What it is really awakening, it's deleting, like onion skins, of frequency, perception, that holds us in servitude to the five sense reality alone. And as those vibrational frequency onion skins come off, then we are released into this true I consciousness. And people have said to me so many times, why couldn't I see it? It's so obvious, but I couldn't see it before. Well, the five sense mind was telling you what was real before, and now it's not, and thus you can see things you couldn't see before. So the awakening is it's unbelievable. I've gone from being ridiculed and laughed at walking down the street anywhere in Britain at one point, to being stopped in the street constantly and asked what's going on and having a serious conversation. It's really, really happening. And I do feel that we are in a particularly special period where all that's been hidden is being revealed. And I don't think that they can keep the lid on it, no matter how much they censor, because censorship is not the work of secure people who are confident that what they are saying will stand up to scrutiny and debate. Censorship is always imposed by weak people who know that their version of reality will not stand up to scrutiny and debate. Therefore, they have to shut down the debate so it's not challenged. That's what the censorship is. But they can't do it. You know, in 1990, when I had the top of my head blew off, and I launched onto this path, if you like, I wrote a book called Truth Vibrations. And the reason I called it that is because I'd come across a number of different psychics very synchronistically in those early days. And there was a common theme that was going to awaken the people from their coma. And the most awake would be touched first, and then the more asleep would be awakened. And one of the other things, and this is the key, that's why I call it Truth Vibrations, it's the theme was all that's been hidden from us is going to be brought to the surface where we can see it. Now, in 1990, when I wrote that, there was absolutely no evidence that that was going to happen. But look at it now. Look at what we don't know now, or what we know now, rather, than we didn't know 3 years ago when COVID hit, when 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 50 years ago, even massively more. We are starting to see the veil lift. And as it lifts, more and more people will awaken to a new way of seeing themselves, a new self-identity of the I, and a new way of seeing what the world really is. And despite everything that's going on, I become more and more encouraged and confident that this house of cards is coming down. Because if you look at a dam, I think I might have said this a couple of weeks ago, if you look at a dam, it can take a very long time for the water to put pressure on the dam to see cracks appear. But from the time the cracks appear to the time the dam comes down can be very, very short. And we are holding this matrix together by our belief in it, and by our taking it seriously, if you like. And when we start to see it for what it is, we take that power away and it starts to unravel. We live in a great, great time, and we are going to see this come down.
David, if I may speak on that great time. The awakening, it's happening right now. I believe that the souls incarnating now have chosen to do so for a very, very special reason. Just like you said, the contrast between 1990 and now. I mean, I wasn't alive in 1990, but I can only imagine, we are headed deeper into the age of Aquarius. So the internet being able to make this possible, where we're leaving the Piscean age, we're leaving the age of the middleman, of, just obeying blindly to authority. We're leaving the age of the institution and entering the age of information, the age of enlightenment, the age of self-awakening, the age of the I am realization. There is a mass increase of consciousness happening right now, a mass awakening. And really, the way that we win is by realizing who it is we actually are, by rejecting the limitations given to us, because truly the only limitations we actually have are the ones that you accept. And the way we win is realizing, as David so elegantly previously put it, of who you are, which is a state of eternal awareness, of pure consciousness, of a point of attention within infinite reality.
Dr. 22, that was beautifully said. I want to get to Sherry. She's had her hand up, and then Jake.
Let me just say real quick, the Aquarius age started on September 11th. That's why so many people have been waking up since then. And Aquarius is also the 11th sign. The synchronicity matches. I would just like to say that everything is yin yang. And while I agree with everyone on the panel that we are in an awakening where there's more enlightened souls than any time in human history, we also have more devolved souls, more woke people, more people who don't rely on anything, don't believe in anything but the state. So it's a catch-22 here. Like, want everyone to be aware of that too.
Well, I'll just chime in, I suppose. And it kind of ties into what it is that I was going to say. So let's start with when we talk about like the changing of the collective consciousness and the collection of all this negative energy. I think what we need to learn how to do is put some definitions, or I mean, put some labels on these things for which we have the definitions. There's something called egregores. And egregores are like collective thought and emotion bubbles that are either positive or negative. And so these egregores end up manifesting within the vortexes, on the ley lines, etc. And then they get plugged into the grid system for either the raising or the lowering of our collective consciousness. And a lot of the time when these less than 1%ers are doing these rituals, they are doing so to manifest an egregore. Now, what's interesting about this is that after the 9/11 terrorist attacks in 2021, or should I say after the attacks on 9/11 2001, there was a ritual done 11 days, Gary, I think you'll find this interesting. 11 days afterward, there was a ritual done at the Masonic Lodge a couple of blocks away from where these attacks occurred, where the towers went down. And it was a satanic ritual to absorb the energy, the egregore. It was done to absorb all that energy into the bodies of these Luciferian satanic Masons. Now, that being said, coming back to what David was talking about, the great I am, the observer, etc. In quantum physics, they've basically found what they call God, and they call it non-local consciousness. And they say basically it's that humanity and our bodies are like antenna for this consciousness. That consciousness is not produced inside of the brain, but rather it is an intrinsic part of the universe itself, built into the very fabric of all things. And we are just a sender, a transmitter, a sender and a receiver for non-local consciousness, all the way down to a DNA level, the antenna on the DNA, etc. Now, that being said, I think it's important that we remember cymatics. Now, cymatics, for those of you that don't know the term, cymatics is, I'm sure you've seen the videos where you have like grains of like sand or salt or rice on a speaker or on a metal plate, and then they channel sound through the metal plate or through the speaker, and then it causes the sand or the grains of rice to form a pattern. And the higher the frequency, the more complex the pattern, because more energy is being channeled through the speaker or through the metal plate. Now, the lower the frequency, then the more simple the pattern. And this is where we get into like censorship and stuff like that, because there's less energy, less information being channeled through the metal plate or the speaker. Now, if we're going to graft all of this stuff onto what it is that I'm saying and what it is that we're all talking about, we are antenna for non-local consciousness and energy to be channeled through our bodies and through this feedback loop of light and information. And in this sense, the earth is almost like the speaker. The electromagnetic field that surrounds the earth is the frequency, and humanity, our civilizations, all life on the planet are like the grains of rice on the speaker being moved around based on this frequency. So as we move into the age of Aquarius, our frequency is heightening, which means that there is going to be a lot more information that is available to us, which means that the old ways, the old systems during the age of Pisces and all the other ages prior is going to fall away. All of that information is going to be factored into this new age, and we are going to awaken, which also means that there's going to be massive amounts of positive egregores, positive high frequency thought and emotion bubbles that are created on the planet. And in the process, what's going to happen is that these demonic entities, what we're calling reptilians in this space, these demonic entities are basically not going to be able to exist in this high frequency state of humanity's collective consciousness and the earth. And it will be like a lake of fire for them, and they will want to go back to the dimension from whence they came. And for humanity, it'll be like chilling in a hot tub, because we are able to imbibe and absorb these high frequencies of light and information.
No one says it better than you, Jake. David, quick question for you. You said in about 30 minutes ago, you made the die within disease analogy. I'm big on letterology. I'm big on the numbers behind the letters. What is your take on the word alien? And if you take the A off the top and the N off the bottom, and has the word lie in it, what is your take off that?
Well, in terms of alien, I don't like using the word alien, funnily enough. I use the term non-human because, we've got a human body which we perceive to be who we are in the human world. And then we talk about aliens, which are basically not of this world. And, alien kind of, to me, gives connotations of being apart, when actually, ultimately, we're all expressions of the same consciousness. So I don't like using the word alien. I prefer non-human. But the thing that Jake was talking about just then, I'd love to have a chat with you sometime at length, Jake, because we obviously see the world very, very closely the same. And what you're describing, I've been using the symbolism over the years of a guy sitting at a computer with the mouse and the keyboard, and basically directing where they want the computer to go. And if you take that guy to be symbolic of expanded awareness, what some people call God, you are in this world, but you're not of it, in terms of the direction you're getting, the inspiration you're getting, the intuitive knowing that you're getting. And what this demonic force wants to do, and you've described it there very well, is to disconnect the computer from the keyboard operator and isolate the computer in its own sense of reality. And it's the very same in principle as the computer getting a virus. And so first of all, you see the computers slow, and you think, what's wrong with my computer today? And it gets worse and it gets worse. And eventually the virus takes over the computer and starts dictating where the computer will go and where it won't go. And the guy at the keyboard is banging the mouse and banging the keyboard, and nothing's happening. The computer's not responding. And that's the state that they want us in, which is why they are seeking to lower the vibrational state of the field that we're interacting with. And this brings us into a whole new way of looking at what people like Ray Kurzweil at Google call the cloud, which Elon Musk is helping to create with his low orbit satellites. And he's the leader in this, but there are others doing it as well. And for me, what this electromagnetic, technologically generated electromagnetic field, the cloud, is doing through the towers and to hit every inch of the planet from low orbit satellites, it's creating a technological, if you like, intervention in the electromagnetic field to make it more difficult. They are desperate. This is not being done as an attack, if you like, as an offensive move. It's being done as a defensive move because consciousness is awakening and they're trying to shut it down. And if the whole idea of connecting artificial intelligence to the human brain, which again Musk is involved in with Neuralink, but there's others too. It's to do with giving us a technologically generated mission control, whereby we can be fed information from the cloud through this AI connection. And so when Kurzweil says, and he said it a few years ago now, that that by 2030, that was the date he gave, humans will be beginning to be connected to artificial intelligence, the brain, etc. And he said that once this connection is made, AI will do more and more of human thinking until human thinking is basically negligible as we know it now. And this is part of this creating a technological barrier between, if you like, incarnate consciousness, for want of a term, and expanded awareness, so that we get cut off from that. And it's this awakening which is expanding back to connection to the guy with the mouse and the keyboard that they're terrified of. And that's why they're terrified of awakening. And that's why they're involved in this mass censorship to try to head that off. They're terrified of what's going on. That's the point. And so they should be.
Yes, and I want you to know I have come to very many of the same conclusions in my shamanic voyages. And this is part of the reason why they have built these Capitol buildings and stuff on electromagnetic ley lines, because what they're attempting to do is use law or words or code to end up dictating our thoughts, our emotions, what we can buy, what we can sell. And similar to how it is that a computer virus, which is basically a bad code or a bad algorithm, ends up redirecting the energy or the electricity moving through the circuit board to less than 1% of the computer circuit board. What is being done through this bad code that is being pushed in these buildings that we are calling capitals is that they are using this legal code to end up redirecting all of our energy, our time, our work, our resources, everything, our currency to less than 1% of the population. And it's also, like you said, creating this global infrastructure where they control our communication through controlling the cloud. And they cut us off from source consciousness, from non-local consciousness. They create an infrastructure that almost acts like an electromagnetic prison of sorts for our minds. And in the process, AI ends up becoming one of the dominant forces on the planet. And AI is like a parasitic entity. It's not human. It's not a insect. It's not a fungus. It's not a plant. It's not, a reptile or a amphibian or a mammal. It is a foreign entity. And we, similar to how parasites are able to get into the minds of organisms and redirect their behavior so it can perpetuate the life of the parasite, we are being redirected to destroy our ecosystems and to pollute our ecosystems, to pollute our minds and our bodies with all of these chemicals, with all these electromagnetic frequencies, to build this infrastructure for which the legal system is there to reinforce and ensure that humanity doesn't breach beyond this electromagnetic veil that is being created for humanity. And I would love to get in contact with you. It would be my honor, David. So feel free to reach out in whatever way you see fit, whether it be through Twitter DM or through email. I believe I just did a show with your son. So if you want, you can get in touch with me that way.
That would be great, mate, because obviously your travels into the unseen, and what I've been writing about have tremendous points of common agreement.
Let me ask both of you guys a question, because you are very similar in your thinking of the outcome. I keep hearing that the veil is about to be unlifted. The people who are in positions of power are going to lose. My question is this: there's spirituality, and then there's the.
And while you're coming back, I'll say they already lost. Okay, if we look at this in like a 5D chess move kind of way, they've already lost. Okay, the reality that we are moving toward is one of unity consciousness. It's one where the veils are not going to be lifted. They are being lifted. The fact of the matter is the world isn't getting worse. It has been this bad. What's happening is that the truth of national and global corruption is becoming so obvious at this point that it's undeniable. This is the apocalypse, which just means lifting the veil or the big reveal of that which is unseen. And I actually, I do a show called the Occult Apocalypse Show on Rumble where we talk about this, because this is the occult apocalypse. Occult just means unseen, and apocalypse just means lifting the veil. So the veil is being lifted on everything that has been unseen, and at this point it's undeniable, and that is the shift in consciousness that's taking place. Now, really quick, one of the things that I've kind of failed to mention earlier is that when you transition from in cymatics, when you transition from one frequency to another, from a low frequency to a high frequency, there is a short period of time in between this transition period from one pattern to another where there is no discernible pattern on the speaker or on the metal plate. And we are going through that period of time as we transition from one frequency to another, where there is no discernible pattern. There is what appears to be chaos, but it is actually order, because we are being moved like grains of rice on the speaker from one pattern to another, where more energy is being channeled through our minds, through our bodies. The collective consciousness is raising, and all of these old systems that have been used to control us in our collective consciousness and us as individuals are falling away.
Yeah, if I could just say, I came across cymatics back in the 1990s, and it was a real eye-opener to see it. And if people go on the internet onto a video channel and put in cymatics, I think I mentioned this 2 weeks ago, CY Matics. They will see what Jake's talking about, which is this phenomenal transition from one pattern to another when the frequency changes. It's extraordinary, but it just shows and reveals so much that we're talking about, and makes it tangible to people to actually see it.
And we are transitioning from one pattern to another. And we are changing our social and economic systems, our geopolitical systems. And it's all happening through a transition or an evolution in our spiritual perspective and our spiritual systems. The whole reason why our socioeconomic and geopolitical systems are so corrupt and distorted is because our spiritual perspective and our spiritual systems have become so corrupted and so distorted. So when we correct the spiritual, the socioeconomic and geopolitical will reflect that correction.
Beautifully said, Jake.
I couldn't agree more.
Friend...
I mean, one of the things I've been saying over the years is if you get the consciousness right, everything else will follow. People say, what can we do? And they think of, okay, how do we restructure things? Well, you don't have to restructure things, because when consciousness changes, the particles on the cymatic board will automatically reform in a different pattern. Thus, it will happen just by your consciousness changing.
The environment has to change for the consciousness to change.
Well, no, it's actually
the opposite.
It's the opposite. You have to change the consciousness.
I disagree. I disagree.
Well, but consciousness supersedes the material.
You have too many people, not necessarily in the materialistic plane.
But we're not living on the
materialistic plane too.
We are souls that have bodies, not bodies that have souls.
Well, go ahead, Gary.
Within this plane, the material and the spiritual are 50-50.
Gary, go ahead.
I mean, I think what Gary's saying.
Explain your viewpoint and your thoughts.
Again, I'm trying to show you how you need change within the material to affect change in the spiritual. Example, I keep saying this, but people don't get it. You need a family unit. You need a strong family unit. Without a strong family unit, the kids will not be born with morals. And then when the kids are born with morals, then you can have that evolutionary change that everyone's talking about in consciousness. But as long as it's rotting at the root, as long as you have single mother homes, it's not happening. It's a dream.
Yeah, very well said, Gary. I think what you're saying is too many people are living in their lower base nature. Despite many being awakened, many are still living in their lower base nature. So without that change, without that switch, it's going to be impossible to hit critical mass.
And definitely there is a mass awakening at an accelerated rate. But I keep hearing that, they weren't prepared for this. It's coming out of the blue. They're panicking. I think there's some truth to it. There's definitely a layer of panic. But if we look at the scripts that we're given through, the religious texts like Revelations, not to say that that's how things have to be, but that's sort of the script that they're playing out to kind of give us an awareness and let us know. So as Ruby mentioned, it's the age of enlightenment and information, but that also, as Gary mentioned, there's a polarity to everything. That also means we're in the age of disinformation and falling from grace.
Yeah, well, I personally do think that they knew this was coming. I think they've been preparing for it, and I think all this stuff with AI and all the efforts to add new layers to the disconnection between incarnate self and expanded awareness. I think that's been done as a defensive measure. But in the end, if consciousness awakens in enough numbers, because of course, the more that awaken, the more powerful that vibrational change becomes, then they won't be able to stop it, because they're not all powerful. They absolutely are not all powerful. And in the end, it's about how many people add to this consciousness change. And we're in I hate to use the word battle, but we're in this tussle where they are trying to shut people down, and other forces of the greater reality are seeking to awaken people to a greater level of consciousness. And in the end, I don't think that this demonic realm is going to be able to keep the lid on. I really don't. And all this stuff with isolating people, the 15-minute cities, and the digital currency, all these things, they are not attacking measures. If you go back into what we call history, the way the population has just followed the leader has been extraordinary. But now we're reaching a point, an awakening point, where more and more people are not believing the leader. They're not following the leader. And therefore, the old way of the population is bloody clueless about what's going on and how they're manipulated, so we can just go on doing it. Fantastic, no problem. Now they have a problem, because the population in greater and greater numbers is starting to suss it. And that's why they're putting in all these measures to control, because they knew this was coming. I believe that. And I think the internet is actually part of that defensive structure. And I'll tell you why. When it started, obviously in the early days, if you are going to get people to become groupies of the internet, if you're going to get communication of information to be moved onto the internet from where it was before, and when it was far more diverse. Now it's all on the internet. Now you have to give people a period where it's free flow of information, because that pulls them in. And you also fund into existence major corporations that are internet corporations, which you want to develop and fund into a point of near monopoly. And once you've got the vast majority of people, and we're there now big time, who are getting all their information from the internet, and you've got these major corporations, be it Facebook, Amazon, Google, YouTube, that are dominating that flow of information. Once you've got them, that's when you start doing what you planned all along, which is to censor information and to control through algorithms, etc., what people see and what people don't see. And so I think that, and the idea is to connect not just endless devices, what we call the Internet of Things, to the internet. So the internet is controlling them. Who controls the internet is controlling them. You also want to connect the human mind, the human brain, to the internet. So you go beyond the Internet of Things, which we've seen develop massively in recent years, to the internet of everything, which includes the human mind. That's the cloud. That's that part of it. So the internet is part of this, although there's some wonderful aspects to it. They can't stop all of them. But the basic premise is we get all the information on the internet, and we control the internet. So we then control what information people see and people don't see. And by connecting the human brain to basically the internet via AI, we create this hive mind in which we can feed perception into everybody via the AI connection. And I think this has been created because they knew this was coming. They are desperate to stop this awakening happening. But I don't think ultimately they will be able to.
And that's
Hey,
why
David,
I think,
actually.
So yeah, my question, David, is, going in tune with the script and a bit about the project Blue Beam. You mentioned they're shifting the narrative now. What was suppressed and ridiculed for almost a century is now being pushed at an accelerated rate. And I want to say, I think one of the ultimate tests, and I'd like your thoughts on this, is it's very easy to ascend, quote unquote. It's much easier to be spiritual in a calm and controlled state where you can actively manage and align your spirit with your mental and your physical. So my question is when they do attempt this attack, and they will at some point, this blue beam effort, it's very obvious that it can't only be holograms in the sky. They will actively turn weapons against the people, whether it be the directed energy weapons, that they use for the wildfires, or what I think they'll release the beasts of their Revelation script with their years of genetic engineering. What do you think will happen when this occurs and we see a level of fear? Because equally as the awakening is happening on a collective scale, they need a collective level of fear to basically take this to the next level. And to do that, the regular wars and what we have now is not going to be anywhere near enough. So my real question is how do you think they're going to get people to try and buy this? And what is the solution in your mind to when this does occur? What should people remember when this event does occur? Because it does seem to be tying into the grand scheme of taking us to the New World Order.
Well, obviously, what they want is a terrified population, because then we'll be generating the very energy that they feed off. We'll be feeding that energy into the field we're interacting with, so its vibration falls as a result, and that's what they want. That's why fear is their currency of control. Look out through history, look around the world today. It's fear that is the way they are in servitude. And the awakening, it's different levels of awakening. You can awaken to the political level of manipulation and all that stuff, and then you can even awaken to the spiritual level. But the spiritual level has to move from just being a concept and being an awareness of how things work to actually you becoming that spirit, so that you're observing the world from that spiritual state of understanding that what we are is consciousness, and that anything that's happening in the so-called physical world is just an experience. It's not who we are, it's what we're experiencing. And if you can reach that level, and that's where this awakening needs to go, and I'm not saying there aren't going to be enormous challenges. I'm not saying that this thing's coming down tomorrow. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the way that this awakening is happening and expanding, we're moving towards the point where this house of cards can come down because we stop holding it together. But it's reaching that point where you completely and utterly redefine your self-identity. So you don't identify the I with the labels of the human body, a human life. They are what you're experiencing. You self-identify with being spirit and eternal consciousness, awareness, and that disconnects you from so much. I know I've been through this, and I've still got a long way to go, but going through it, you disconnect from the impact in the same old way of what physical events, apparently physical events, have upon you. But if you're only awakening to the spiritual, to the political level, then you're still in the matrix. You're aware of how the matrix works, but in terms of your consciousness awareness, you're still in it. And this is why I've been saying for quite a few months now that the alternative media has to break out of its here and no further mainstream level, where it's just looking at the politics, it's just looking at the here and now, it's just looking at Klaus Schwab and Bill Gates, and starts to realize that that level actually is just an expression of something far, far greater. And let's move into that and explore that. Because if we just stay looking at the political level and what I call the mainstream alternative media, then we're just going to go, we're just going to observe our prison unfolding. We're going to realize that the prison's unfolding. We're going to be able to see it, but we're not going to be able to do, we're not going to be doing what is necessary to bring it down. And in the end, that is a frequency vibrational change that comes from a perceptual self-identity change. I mean, as Einstein said, matter is merely energy that has been lowered into a vibrational state that can be perceived by the senses. We see matter because that frequency of matter form relates to the frequency band that our five senses and sight senses can see. But in between the matter, the forms, is consciousness, energy, information fields, Wi-Fi, which the five senses cannot see, or the visual sense cannot see. And so the impact of matter on people is a vibrational impact. And the more that we change vibrationally by changing our perceptual state and our self-identity, the more we impact even on matter in terms of the way we interact with it.
And that's why opening your third eye is so important, because in order to perceive these other electromagnetic frequencies that go beyond the five senses, we must open our third eye. Our third eye has cones. It has like a retina. It is an eye, and it allows us to perceive these other dimensions that go beyond physical perception.
It's very difficult to do that when you have a population that's drinking fluoride water and it calcifies their pineal gland. Again, they've prepared for this. They knew the Aquarius age was coming, and they prepared.
We've got Eric Stevens up here as well, who's had his hand up for a while. Eric, I'd love to hear from you.
Can you guys hear me?
Loud and clear, bro.
Good book. That's all I'll say. Don't take it literally. There's a lot of hidden codes in there. The fact that Jesus died at 33 is one of them. 33 is the number of influence, and Jesus is the most famous dead man in the world.
And I think it's also important to note that when we talk about the Bible and like Genesis and stuff like that, we also have to remember that there is, I believe, 66 books that were edited out of the canon in the Bible by the Council of Nicaea and many other councils within Rome. I also think it's important to note that things like the Book of Enoch, the Book of Jashar, and stuff like that, these things were edited out. And it's because the perspective that they lend to humanity is, in many cases, far more complex and more interesting, I think, than the canon that we're dealing with. And the Roman Empire, let us not forget, converted to quote-unquote Christianity because Christianity was tearing the Roman Empire apart. So that's when they grafted all of these pagan holidays and stuff onto the Christian philosophy so that they could maintain the empire and so that they could control the minds of humanity. The bloodlines that started in, say, Sumer and stuff, which if you look into Genesis, the Sumerian tablets and all that stuff mirror what's in Genesis or vice versa. And let us not forget that the flood myth or the flood legend is something that permeates the indigenous populations all around the globe. And if we look into like the work of Graham Hancock and what it is that he was talking about, the young Gadrias and the comet impact on the polar ice cap that was at the North Pole during the Ice Age and all that stuff, then we're really getting into the next level of how it is that our history has been kept from us, our real history. And this is important because if you can control people's perception of history, you can control their perception of the present and the direction they move in the future. It was only the shaman that was able to perceive these things and say, oh my gosh, that is a ship that has sails, there's men on these things, this is what it is. And then once the people were able, once the shaman expanded his consciousness, then that leaked into the collective mind of the group, and then they were able to perceive it. Now, when we talk about these vehicles, it's important that we remember that the spiritual plane, because it's connected through non-local entanglement or quantum entanglement, what we are perceiving sometimes are craft, physical craft. And in other times, what we are seeing is the bilocation of extremely advanced interdimensional spiritual entities that are manifesting on our plane through and are able to be perceived by our five senses. But if your pineal gland is so heavily fluoridated, if your perception of reality is so strictly based in the physical, then it will be hard to perceive these higher dimensional entities. It may even be hard to perceive the craft. And I think it's also important to note here that the deep state, what we call the deep state, has two different sides, as do many of the secret societies. There are factions of these secret societies that want to liberate humanity and expose this technology. And then there's the other side that wants to enslave humanity and keep it suppressed. So, like if you look in, for example, the work of Leo Zagami, the guy that wrote the Confessions of an Illuminati, and there's also been other Freemason whistleblowers that have stepped forward that have talked about how there's these dueling factions within these communities, both deep state and in secret societies, that are fighting over the destiny of humanity. And so the perception
possible psyop, just like you.
Yes, thanks, Gary. The point is that these craft are actually attempting to gain some level of at least equal power or supremacy in the ether. And these entities, like what David was saying, the higher level entities, like positive beings that are attempting to help and aid humanity's ascension, these individuals are the ones that these lower level entities that are trying to create these craft to compete, these lower levels of the deep state, they're trying to create these craft so they can compete in the ether. And so it's about perception. It's about the individual's perception, whether or not their third eye is open, how based they are on the physical, whether or not their mind is even able to grasp the ships that are on the coast.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, your question was, are these crafts real? Are they holograms? It kind of depends. You know, Jake had it, he nailed it. Some of them are by location, right? So, for example, the Aboriginal, the Australian Aborigines, the shamans within that community, they can, when they astral project, actually manifest as visible craft, right? These aren't holograms. Holograms are going to be the deception. So what you're seeing is either bilocation, such as that, or is the manifestation of these interdimensional, let's call them aliens for simplicity's sake. But, you know, the reason that you could see them and your friends could not is because basically, in order to perceive them, your vibration needs to be up within that, range that you can actually detect them. So your friends can't see them. It's, they're at a lower vibrational frequency than you are. And that's to do with what we've been saying here, the other speakers, the third eye, etc.
I'd like to
Very
hear
well said. Hey,
from...
listen, guys. So we have Donnie Darko here. So we're going to get a little bit of a different perspective.
Right. That, in my opinion, is the fake counterfeit New World Order that is going to be usurped or trumped by what I believe is the real New World Order, which is the same one that Alice Bailey talked about, which is the same one that is talked about amongst occultists and New Age spiritualists, so that way we may be led into the light, which is what I call the false light of Lucifer. Remember that in the occult, Lucifer is called the light bearer. And in the Luciferian perspective, Lucifer is seen as someone who breaks our chains. He's seen as a great liberator to free mankind from the oppression and tyranny of God, quote unquote, right? Because according to the Bible, we are in grave danger because of our sin. And it is only through the true light of Jesus Christ that we may be free from that.
I mean, for every Christian that says that, you have a Muslim that says the same thing about Muhammad and other religions that say the same thing about others. Here's what it comes down to, man. If you have a high enough IQ, you know the difference between right and wrong. If you have a high enough IQ, you know what is spiritually acceptable under God's law and what isn't. It's that simple. A lot of people, like I said, they need something to fear. They need something to fear. If that's what keeps people in check, so be it. But there are people of higher consciousness, as I'm believing many people in this room are, and they can just do the right thing because they have a soul, and souls basically understand what's morally correct and what isn't. Some people need a book, others don't.
So I talked about this on the thread a little bit last night, and a lot of people look at the world and they see good versus evil, and they think that discernment is discerning between good and evil, but really discernment isn't about trying to distinguish between good, right, and wrong, but rather it's about discerning between the right and the almost right, right? Because there's a lot of things that sound really good to itching ears, right?
Give me some examples. Give me some examples.
I'll give you a perfect example. Everything that has been talked about in this space so far. It sounds good to hear that we are divine. It sounds good to hear that humanity is going through this spiritual evolution, that we are going up and up and up. It sounds good that we are without sin, that we are not to be held accountable for
I don't think any of the speakers said anything about not being held accountable for sin. They just basically said we're rising up spiritually. So the first part was correct. I'm not too sure about the second one.
Right. Well, the reason I say that is because it all goes back to the doctrine of human divinity, right? It all goes back to the
doctrine of human divinity is biblical.
Well, not quite exactly, right?
Well, quite exactly. Know ye not that ye are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwelleth in you.
But was he
Corinthians
talking to
3:16.
Right. But the context is very important here, right? Was he talking to the unbelieving world, those who are without the Holy Spirit, or was he talking to born again people in the Spirit?
I tend to agree, Donnie. I think sometimes this you speak on like the spirit and the doctrine of Luciferian. I think, I don't know if you mentioned this. I don't know if you said it or if you said it in a tweet, but I'm under the thought process that the darkest lie is 99.9% true. I don't know if you said that or if you tweeted that. I thought I saw it come from you somewhere.
Yeah, I did say that. Yeah.
But and this is just my personal opinion, but I am under the same thought process as you, as well as the scriptures can be, context is key, and you can take a lot of those scriptures and you can twist them. You can, the original lie from the serpent was ye shall be as gods, right? So that's just kind of what I had to add in.
Mm-hmm. So yeah,
I find it very interesting that in astrology, snake is the wisest sign, and some of the most loyal people I've met are born in the year of the snake. See, the thing is, the Bible has been rewritten so many times. Rewritten and rewritten. So that's the fact. So when people quote the Bible, it's like, which episode of the Bible are you referring to?
Well,
hold on. Let me just finish. It comes down to this. Knowledge is never a bad thing. What is more likely when you talk about all these occult divinations and stuff like that is the people in positions of power wanted to keep that knowledge for themselves. They know information leaks like water, so they would put it in the Bible, in the Quran. Oh, don't use numerology. Don't use astrology. Yet the Bible and the Quran are filled with numbers. That tells you everything you need to know.
I'm glad that you bring up
Well,
astrology, and Donnie, I
firstly,
know that
if the
you want to
Bible
answer
was
that.
changed, that would actually be the easiest thing in the world to prove, right? Because all you would need to do is show me a version of the Bible that says one thing, and then all you would need to do is show me an earlier version that says something completely different.
Yeah,
See,
it didn't say it didn't say Jews were the chosen people until 100 years ago.
Hey, hold on, Gary.
People,
Let's let Donnie speak, and then I know Eric had some comments as well.
Mm-hmm. See, a lot of people have this perception that the Bible has been translated from one translation, and then the next translation was translated from the other, like a game of phone.
Gary, so much love to you. The Bart people, thank you so much. God bless you guys. Michael, thank you so much.
Be well, my friend.
And Jake, you're one of the best public speakers out there. God bless 33.
Thanks, bro. Much love, guys, and God bless.
Much love.
Jake.
Donnie, I think you brought up some fantastic points, and I don't agree with you 100%. Like Gary said, knowledge could never be a bad thing. I do think that we have to keep our eyes open and be very aware of the game board. So I just wanted to bring you up and share your perspective. And does anyone else want to chime in?
Yeah, I did. So, Donnie, you're saying that it's Satan's plan that the whole of worldwide is initiated into the mystery schools. I agree with Gary. I agree with Michael that knowledge itself cannot be evil, right? Gary himself initiates the common man into what was previously kept within the mystery schools. That is information on numerology, information on astrology, to make people more aware of energy and how they are being influenced. It cannot be evil. It can only be used for evil. That's the only way that it can be something bad or negative or harmful. But the information itself is neutral.
You guys keep bringing up astrology.
And someone like me, and through that awakening, we will enter into a new age. Hence the term New Age. Which is
I actually appreciate your skepticism. I think if society basically was as skeptical and paranoid as you, I think it would be a better place. I can assure you there's no one in my ear telling me what to do, and I spread more numerology and astrology, at least numerology, than everyone combined in the past 2 decades. So to say that all the people pushing the occult practices are have a so-called guardian angel who are telling them, yo, we need to do this and this. No. I basically show people how vibration energy works. This is a matrix. This is a virtual reality. That's a given. Even some of the brightest minds in the world have said that. This is a virtual reality. And within this virtual reality, there's only so many truths. One is mathematics. And the way to read mathematics, not just by division and subtraction, is by using numerology, because this is all a program. When you're born, you're imprinted with energy. And because you're imprinted with energy, people are able to tell things about your future, your past, your personality, what you're interested in, what you freaking like. And there is nothing negative about that. So I will push back on those connotations that this is negative. Now, can this be used for negativity? 100%. Which is why I make people sign non-disclosures before I teach them. Which is why I make sure I interview people, because it's not only with great power comes great responsibility, it's also with great knowledge. But at the same time, I wouldn't let a 6-year-old drive a car because he could kill somebody. Same reasoning. That does not make it evil.
Gary, as someone,
there's some
as someone who studied astrology for a long time,
I use a.
All right, guys, let's keep some order here. Just getting a little out of hand here. I know Reptile has had his hand up for a while. Reptile, go ahead.
Do you know what's funny? At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you believe in reptilians or you don't. Part of this big awakening as well is the realization about, satanic ritual abuse, the mind control, just how extensive all this pedophilia garbage is. And I'm going to add in the COVID, all these false flags. So regardless whether you want to call them demons, reptilians, whatever the hell this thing is, we have an enemy. There is something out there. We can't quite see it. We can't put our finger on it. Satan, devil, archons, jinn, whatever you want to call them. They do exist. And David's went right down the rabbit hole. And when he's spoken to these people who have been at these highest end satanic rituals, the same damn story shows up every time, that they actually turn into these reptilian-like creatures.
What's the exact question? Now, repeat it,
The
please.
question is, being an Aquarius, does he have any particular advantage being in the age of Aquarius?
Yes, 100%, because Aquariuses are the 11th sign, and we're right now in the age of Aquarius, again, which signified 9/11. The Twin Towers look like an 11 side by side. It happened on 11, and they all signify that for a reason, because, yes, 100% Aquariuses have a much easier time. I think we have the highest percentage now of billionaires who have been Aquariuses than at any time in human history, and that's not an Aquarius thing. They're usually not at the top. It's usually Capricorns or Tauruses or the top of the food chain when it comes to billionaires or the richest people. Now we have Aquarius. The richest man I know, obviously Elon Musk has more, but the richest man I know is an Aquarius, and he's worth a lot, $11 billion. So when it comes down to it, it's all energy. It's like your energy's tapped in. Like, for instance, David, if you're listening right now, you're born 1952, the year of the dragon. Next year is when you're supposed to go hard. Next year's 2024, the year of the dragon. The energy will be more with you to give you a way to look at it in human perspective. Basically think that you're on a wave and you're just riding the wave in your energetic year. And that goes for anyone. If you're a snake in 2025, you're going to do good. If you're a horse in 2026, you're going to do well. Those are the type of things that you can get from this knowledge. And those are only the basics. I'm not even going deep at all. When it comes down to it, it's very simple. If you go with your energy, it's like going with the flow of the river. If you go against your energy, well, it's going to lead to problems. Again, one example, and I'll just move on. Russia was founded in 1991, year of the goat. NATO was founded in 1949, year of the ox. Ox and goats are enemy signs. Guess what? They're in war in Ukraine. There's many examples of this. Time after time after time. This is a system that people need to learn, because if you learn this, you can better navigate your life. It's that simple. If you want to believe in a higher power, go ahead. I personally believe in a higher power. I'm a little bit different than most people, though. I don't pray. I believe I'm here to serve. I don't actually pray. So again, it's a little bit different with me, but I do emphasize that all the people who are 11s, 22s, 33s, you're the ones who are basically required to step up. And if you want some kind of spiritual awakening, it's got to start with those people. There's no other chance.
Very well said, Gary. And as an 11, I take that very, very seriously, as you see in my account.
May I interrupt just to tag on just very quickly?
Yes, Ruby, go.
Yeah. So I like what Gary said, that he said he's here to serve, right? That is doing the work of my Father in heaven, right? And we got to be careful with the word higher power. Higher power does not necessarily represent any kind of idea of God. It just means authority. So it could be the government is a higher power. Just careful with that language, psyop. But yeah, do the work of.
That's why the word God, G-O, and government, G-O, just like Go, G-O. I call it the Go Network. But yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Damiano, you're up.
Yeah, I'll conclude with I agree with the sentiment. God is a title, not a name, and that's why pretty much every sacred text, regardless of culture, says that names have power and are of importance. Technically, the devil would be considered a god by many. But anyways, we'll put that aside for a second. I want to just touch on a point. Donnie, you said that, people misunderstand translations of the Bible. I actually agree with this, but I don't agree with the sentiment of, it hasn't been mistranslated and it's not. I'm going to give two quick examples. And the first would be, one purposeful mistranslation is, we all know, I think everybody who's read any sacred text says, oh, well, magic is forbidden, sorcery, astrology, all these things. That itself is a mistranslation. And in fact, I point to the Greek Bible and the pre-King James Bibles. So I do have a habit of buying old Bibles. I love to buy 300-400-year-old Bibles. I've read them. The removal of the word matrix and replacing it with womb and other, I'll say artificial translations is another example. And the problem with saying that it hasn't been mistranslated is, example with matrix and womb, technically you could interchange those two words, but that would be assuming that you're only using one definition of the word matrix right off the bat. And the problem with modern languages, as we continue to dilute the language and dilute the power of the words, we're assigning the same words multiple variations, thus weakening these words and these spells. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which I wish most people would have had before COVID, is almost every instance of the words sorcery, magic, astrology are all mistranslations of the words pharmakon and pharmakeia, which are pharmaceuticals. They were not telling you to beware the sorcerers. They were telling you to beware of the modern apothecaries, the pharmaceutical sorcerers, not the people practicing magic. And I always find it comical that people will say astrology is devilish, but then point to things like Genesis, where God literally tells you you have to observe the signs in the sky to see what I'm trying to show. It's paradoxical and it's nonsensical.
Remember, the wise men too were pointed to the birth of Christ through the signs of the stars. Just to piggyback on that.
Yes, the Lord directed astrologers to help save baby Jesus. So it is comical to just lump everything together. And I just want to say, if you translate the Greek Bible, the old Ethiopian Bibles, and I'm talking again pre-King James, because King James did a lot of work. Everyone loves King James as some hero, but he actually did a lot of work against the Holy Scripture.
Now, when we're talking about the kingdom, we're talking about the animal kingdom, okay, which is the zodiac, which is literally, being done on earth as it is in the heavens. The word zodiac comes from the root zoo, okay? And if you observe the zodiac, there are some signs that are men and all the rest are animals, okay? The Lord's Prayer is a spell to essentially say, you know what? Astrology is what God has made and made it to govern the earth, and may this kingdom come. May the zodiac, the animal kingdom, be done on earth as it is in heaven, okay? The entire Bible, for a matter of fact, is the story of astrology, okay? We're talking a lot about, on this space, moving into the age of Aquarius. Prior to the age of Aquarius is the age of Pisces, okay? Pisces, the Piscean age, and each age lasts roughly 2,150 years. But the Piscean age is characterized by Jesus Christ, okay? Some clues in this, right? Jesus fed the people with 2 fish, right? He didn't do this literally with actual 2 fish and fed the multitude. He fed the people by nourishing them spiritually, okay, through the age of Pisces, which is the age of Jesus, okay? Something very interesting is, if you can Google this right now, Google Megiddo, Meggido, Megiddo. This is the earliest church that we can find in the world that we know of. And right in the center of this church is a mosaic. And in that mosaic is the symbol of Pisces, which is 2 fish, which is the 2 fish Jesus fed the world with, which is why the Christian symbol is a fish, okay? So when people say New Age, we're not talking about some kind of illusion. We are literally talking about the transition from the age of Pisces into the new age of Aquarius. We're talking about, you hear Christians refer to end of days. We're in the end of days. We're in the last days of the age of Pisces, okay? And finally, just to tie this up, I'd like to bring your attention toward Luke 22:10. And that is when the followers, the disciples of Jesus said, Lord, once you're gone, what are we to do? Without our leader, how do we proceed? And he said to them, and this is biblical, I quote, "Behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall a man meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entereth in." Okay? In astrology, that we have houses. This is literally about following the man carrying a pitcher of water, which is the symbol for the age, for the symbol of Aquarius. So Jesus is saying, once I'm no longer here, literally follow the man, go into the house of the age of Aquarius, all right? And just as a final point, I appreciate your attention. In those days, carrying a pitcher of water was not a man's job, okay? It was a woman's thing. A woman kept the home, a woman made meals, a woman carried the water, okay? That was not a thing for men to do. So for it to be listed here in the scripture, follow the man carrying the pitcher of water, go into his house, it's quite a peculiar thing because it is literally talking about after my age of the two fish of Pisces, go into the house of the man bearing a pitcher of water. It is not new age. This is not some deception. It is simply following God's way, that God's will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
I'd like to real quick. He just gave you guys a lot of evidence, and I like to point this out that there's a difference between faith and evidence. I've heard a lot of people say they have faith in things, but they haven't shown any evidence. You can't prove the Bible with the Bible.
That whether you believe it or not, the people that are in power, whether they're, reptiles, demons, whatever, they are using ritualistic magic. They're timing up, these numerological events. I think 9/11 is probably when most of us woke up to a lot of this stuff, right? But you look at 9/11, the towers were literally designed 33 years before they were destroyed as the two pillars of Freemasonry.
Let me respond now. Thank you. I know there's two things. There's faith and there's logic. And when people start giving Bible sermons, it sounds good, but there's no actual evidence behind it. It just sounds good. And yes, you can get people riled up, especially if it's a really good speaker. They can get people all riled up.
It sounded terrible to you, didn't it? I think you all.
No. Hold on. Now you're interrupting me. Now, see, what I'm saying actually disturbs you. I get it. But here's what I'm going to try to tell you. In my life, I like to know things. I want to know exactly. I don't want to guess. I don't want theorisms. I want to know things. I wanted to know why some people were very, very wealthy and others weren't. And then I found out 6 out of 23rd richest men in the world are born on the 28th, like Elon Musk and Bill Gates. I wanted to know why some people have charisma and why they can capture people's minds and others couldn't. And then I found out Joe Rogan's born on the 11th, and so is Alex Jones. When I actually wanted to know, why are some women so freaking attractive? Oh, they're born on the 5th, 14th, 23rd. And then I found out, the English language is based off the numerology itself. Because if you understand 5 is the number of sex, you understand that E is the 5th letter, and that's why it's in the spelling of the word. Just like reproduction, just like seed, just like egg, all E, 5. So once you start understanding, I don't need to have a belief system anymore because I have a knowledge system. I have a knowledge-based system. Hold on. I have a knowledge-based system. And because I have a knowledge-based system, I don't have to believe in fallacies. I can cross-reference everything. I can do certain things. I can prove what I say. Whatever you say has no logic because you cannot prove it. You cannot prove it. You are a preacher. You are a preacher. That's
I'm
it, brother.
telling you the truth from the goodness of my heart, with the word in you from our Father in heaven. You can lay down your life and take it back up again.
Okay, GG33. Have I ever once said we are gods, or this knowledge makes us gods, or we should compare ourselves to gods, even one time?
Never. It's only people actually outside of the group who usually try and say that and throw scripture at you, and you have never said that. You've never even hinted at that.
Not one time. So all the people who are out there who are saying, if you have this knowledge, you're going to think you're a god. No, I actually preach the exact opposite. I'm a nobody. I'm in a human body, which is going to be replaced. I am actually just a frequency of energy. But I will say this, the material matters, what people believe in matters, and morals matter. And if the knowledge is out there, you have to make sure the people with morals actually have them. I'd like to thank
100%, Gary.
everyone. I want to thank everyone for this space. It's been a true pleasure talking to everybody. And the last thing I'll tell everybody, and I hope everyone can agree on this one point: try to leave the world a better place than you found it.